Karen Ann was not a woman easily spooked. A seasoned journalist, she'd reported from war zones, interviewed hardened criminals, and explored the darkest corners of society. But there was something about the train, a creeping dread that settled in her gut as it rumbled through the night. It was a routine assignment: cover a small-town festival. The train, an archaic beast of steel and steam, was the only way to reach the remote location. The carriage was almost empty, the rhythmic click-clack of the wheels punctuated by an eerie silence. The only other passenger was an elderly woman, hunched over a worn leather suitcase. As the night deepened, so did the unease. A cold draft seemed to seep through the carriage, no matter how Karen adjusted the vents. The old woman's incessant coughing sounded like a mournful dirge, and then there were the shadows, dancing grotesque shapes on the carriage walls as the train hurtled through the darkness. Karen tried to focus on her work, the glow of her laptop a feeble counterpoint to the encroaching gloom. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, her mind was filled with images of ghostly figures, their eyes burning through the darkness. A sudden jolt of the train made her jump. She looked up, her heart pounding. The old woman was gone. The suitcase, however, remained, its leather cracked and worn. Curiosity overcame her fear. She cautiously approached the suitcase and hesitated before opening it. Inside, nestled amongst faded clothes and old photographs, was a small wooden box. It was heavy for its size. Karen lifted it, her fingers tracing intricate carvings on the lid. With trembling hands, she opened it. A chill ran down her spine. Inside the box was a human heart, preserved in a glass jar filled with a murky liquid. But it wasn't the heart itself that terrified her. It was the way it pulsed, a faint, rhythmic beat echoing in the silent carriage. A scream built in her throat, but no sound escaped her lips. Her eyes were fixed on the heart, a macabre metronome keeping time with the relentless rhythm of the train. And then, a whisper, as cold and chilling as the draft, seemed to fill the carriage. "Don't look away," it said. Karen's eyes snapped shut, but the image of the pulsating heart was burned into her mind. When she dared to open them again, the heart was gone, replaced by a sense of overwhelming emptiness. The train seemed to slow, then stop. Outside, a thick fog had enveloped the train. There was no platform, no station, just an endless expanse of white. The old woman was back, her face devoid of any emotion, her eyes black pits in the fog. "You shouldn't have looked," she whispered, her voice a chilling rasp. Karen felt a cold hand grasp hers. As she was pulled towards the open train door, she looked back at the empty carriage. The heart was back, beating furiously, its rhythm echoing in the fog. The last thing she saw before disappearing into the white abyss was the train starting to move again, its whistle a mournful cry in the night. The morning sun found Karen wandering along a deserted country road, her mind a blank. There was no sign of the train, no memory of the night's horrors. But as she looked down, she saw a small, wooden box in her hands. It was empty. The incident was never reported. Karen lived the rest of her life with a shadow over her, a constant fear of the dark and the unknown. And every time a train passed, a shiver ran down her spine, a reminder of the night she lost a part of herself to the endless night. The mystery of the midnight train and the heart in the box remained unsolved, a haunting enigma that would forever be etched in the annals of her mind. Story number 2. James Charles was not a man of fear. He'd traversed jungles, scaled mountains, and dived into the depths of the ocean. Yet, as the train chugged through the night, an unsettling chill crept into his bones. It wasn't the cold. It was something more, a premonition of dread that hung heavy in the air. He was en route to a remote village nestled in the heart of the Carpathian Mountains. A renowned folklorist, he was investigating the local legends of werewolves and vampires, tales as old as the mountains themselves. The journey was long, and the train, an antiquated relic, seemed to groan with every mile. As darkness enveloped the landscape, the train seemed to isolate itself from the world. Outside, the moon cast an ethereal glow on the snow-covered fields, a haunting beauty that was both mesmerizing and unnerving. Inside, the rhythmic click-clack of the wheels provided a monotonous backdrop to the growing silence. The other passengers had retired to their berths, leaving James alone in the dimly lit carriage. He decided to indulge in a book, a collection of local folklore, to pass the time. The stories were chilling, tales of creatures of the night that roamed the forests, seeking human prey. The more he read, the more the eerie silence of the train seemed to amplify the horrors described in the pages. A sudden jolt of the train snapped him out of his reverie. A low growl echoed through the carriage, a sound so primal and guttural that it sent shivers down his spine. His heart pounded in his chest as he strained to listen. The growl came again, closer this time, followed by a faint scratching sound. Fear, cold and clammy, enveloped him. He fumbled for the light switch, illuminating the carriage in a harsh, white glow. Nothing. The carriage was empty, save for himself. Yet the sound persisted, a low, menacing growl that seemed to emanate from beneath the floorboards. Panic began to set in. He grabbed his bag, searching frantically for a weapon, anything to defend himself. His hands found a small metal flashlight. With trembling fingers, he shone the beam towards the source of the noise. As the light cut through the darkness, his blood ran cold. There, beneath the train, a pair of glowing red eyes stared back at him. A monstrous shape, larger than any dog he had ever seen, emerged from the shadows. Its body was covered in matted fur, and its teeth were long and sharp. It was a creature from the nightmares, a beast from the darkest depths of folklore. Terror consumed him. He stumbled backward, his mind racing. The train was slowing down, the creature was getting closer. He had to escape. With a surge of adrenaline, he flung open the carriage door and leaped onto the platform. The train was moving slowly, but the ground was a long way down. He clung to the handle, his knuckles white. The creature's growl echoed in the night, a sound of pure, unbridled rage. Just as he thought he couldn't hold on any longer, the train came to a halt. With a desperate heave, he pulled himself onto the platform and stumbled away from the tracks. He turned to look back at the train. The creature was gone, vanished into the night as mysteriously as it had appeared. The morning sun found James huddled at the side of the tracks, shivering and traumatized. The local villagers found him, their faces etched with concern. They told him of the legend of the chupacabra, a creature of the night said to prey on livestock. James knew he had encountered the stuff of nightmares. The experience had changed him. The fearless explorer was now a man marked by fear. He never returned to the Carpathian Mountains. The memory of those glowing red eyes and the terrifying growl haunted his dreams for years to come. The train journey that was supposed to be an adventure had turned into a nightmare, a stark reminder that sometimes the darkest corners of the world are not found in distant lands, but in the shadows of our own minds. Story number 3. Michael Joseph had always been a city boy, the kind who reveled in the concrete jungle's relentless pulse. But New York, with its towering skyscrapers and ceaseless energy, was a different beast altogether. He was headed there, bag and dreams in tow, to pursue a master's in finance. The train journey, he'd been told, was an experience in itself, a chance to unwind before the city's relentless pace consumed him. It was a cold November night when the train chugged out of the station. The carriage was sparsely populated, a welcome respite from the claustrophobic crowds he'd grown accustomed to. A soft, rhythmic clicking filled the air, punctuated by the occasional whistle as the train snaked through the night. Michael found a cozy corner, wrapped himself in a blanket, and lost himself in a book. As hours passed, the landscape outside transformed into a monochromatic blur. The world outside seemed to be asleep, while inside a different kind of slumber was creeping over him. A sudden jolt shook him awake. The train had screeched to a halt. A thick fog had descended, obscuring everything beyond the carriage windows. A sense of unease crept over him. The train remained motionless for what felt like an eternity. The silence was broken only by the soft snores of a fellow passenger and the occasional creak of the train. A chill, unrelated to the cold night, ran down his spine. When the train finally resumed its journey, a peculiar sensation washed over him. It was as if the train was moving slower, almost reluctantly. The rhythmic clicking of the wheels had transformed into a sinister grating sound, and then he saw it. A figure shrouded in mist, standing by the tracks, its face obscured by the darkness. It was a fleeting glimpse, but it was enough to send shivers down his spine. Fear, cold and clammy, gripped him. He tried to shake it off, to convince himself it was a trick of the light, a figment of his overactive imagination. But the image persisted, a haunting specter in the corner of his mind. As dawn approached, the fog began to lift. The figure by the tracks was gone. Relief washed over Michael, but it was short-lived. The train was now traveling through a desolate, almost eerie landscape. Abandoned houses, their windows like empty eye sockets, lined the tracks. A sense of dread replaced the earlier fear. He felt as if he was being watched, followed. Every shadow seemed to hold a sinister secret. The other passengers, too, seemed to have fallen into an uneasy silence. As the first rays of sunlight pierced through the carriage windows, the landscape began to change. The desolate scenery was replaced by rolling hills and verdant fields. The train picked up speed, as if eager to leave the nightmarish journey behind. When Michael finally stepped out of the train station in New York, the city's vibrant energy washed over him. The horror of the night seemed like a distant dream. But as he walked through the bustling streets, he couldn't shake the feeling that something sinister had touched him that night. A part of him was still on that train, trapped in the mist, haunted by the figure by the tracks. The city that was supposed to be a dream turned into a place of shadows and whispers. Michael knew he would never forget the night of the ghostly train. It was a journey that had altered him, forever marking him as a traveler who had glimpsed the dark side of the rails. Our horror stories are over. Please like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more horror stories. Thanks for watching.